So what we'd always sort of talked about is to have sort of like a 3-finger hold or like a 3-finger tap or something like that. And usually when we think about gestures, we always initiate things on sort of a touch down. So you touch down, you analyze your hand to see where your fingers are, what position and things like that.
Explore the table to find more images.
And what we talked about in our group is really what you want to be able to do to explore is just drag your hand along the surface. So this actually became a new challenge that we had never really thought about before. And so this is why you see these 2 zones here. This is just a time limitation, not necessarily by design or the way we think maybe it should be. So basically what's going on in here is you can, you see these, your fingers are actually grabbing these zones, right? And so as you're moving along, you're calculating where your fingers are, and then when you come into
ice crystal formation,
it reads the title of it. And so assuming that
ice crystal formation,
you find the object,
ice crystal formation,
and then you can tap down.
A female scientist is silhouetted by the setting sun. She's casting a cup of water in an arc-like path through the air. The water freezes to make ice crystals. Explore the table to find more images.
So just as you come up, maybe keep that in mind as when you cross this border, you actually have to raise your finger up and put it back down to reinitiate the touch. Again, just not the way it's we would ideally implement it, but just for the sake of time, that was the working model. So I think that's it. If you guys want to,
the separation of audio is the other thing.
Oh, the separation of audio
that we didn't quite get.
Antarctic night sky.
So one of the biggest problems, challenges I think with this is there's audio going on, there's multiple users, so how do you make a distinction between who is doing what and where? So there's a couple ideas that came up. One is the separation of audio spatially, and the other is by tone quality. So you can, we could, for example, one person recorded this because we're a limited group, but you could, for example, put a different hand with a different person's voice, or change the quality of their voice to help distinguish between the sounds. Here we did a spatial separation. We wanted to use the audio dome. So basically what we have is the sound over here coming from this, and the sounds over here coming from below. So it's sort of almost more like a top-down more than a left-right, but you get a little bit of positional left-right separation. And what I did, because I was wearing headphones when I was doing this, is just kind of did a one-to-one mapping, where you're basically mapping the screen to left and right is continuous. So actually middle is somewhere in the middle, which for this particular environment, you don't get as good a separation as you might. But that's something you would try in your environment, and you would really tweak to the specific setting that you have, is how you exactly want to map that spatialization. So, if anybody else has anything to say?
Just one quick thing. So hopefully, I mean, as we work through this, and this is one of the reasons we're trying to get some feedback, is that we're hoping we can build this into open exhibits, so this would just be something that anyone who's developing anything with our software or multi-touch software framework would be able to easily access. And the first step would be recorded audio, but then we might also add a text-to-speech layer as well. So our group also had some extensions. So do you want to run through that?
Yeah. Let me just say first that what I think is really cool about this, and I don't know if anyone touched on it before, is that the experience mirrors what a sighted visitor would be doing. So as a sighted visitor would be exploring or scanning with their eyes and then picking something. A blind visitor is exploring tactilely with their fingers.
History of their
So I think that's cool that it's not just sort of something slapped on at the end. It's like an actual mirroring of the experience that everyone else is having. We also talked about a few extensions that didn't quite fit with the two approaches, but could be cool. So we talked about a tactile surface layer. Kerry has on his iPhone like a sticker that's
an overlay
that has bumps as an orientation device, kind of, right? So we talked about doing something like that. So maybe on the edge of the table there'd be some bumps that indicated where a menu was that you could pull up, or maybe like different piles of images or whatever the application was could be indicated by a different texture on the table. And Jim says that that's possible using etched glass.
Yeah, I think it'd probably be better to do, we talked a little bit about it, that it'd probably be better to do like a set of decals or stickers that you would just reapply.
That way it would be changeable based on what the software is.
But that you could use it for fixed navigation items, or even to break out zones. Obviously, when you have dynamic moving objects, that's not really going to be helpful. But there's, you know, a lot of multi-touch tables will have some symmetric navigation in corners. Sure. A lot of multi-touch applications will have symmetric navigation that might be fixed in a corner or on both sides. So you could use some sort of a tactile overlay. The other thing that would help, which is interesting, is that because we have pretty thick glass in this, it's 5 millimeters. If you're coming up to this, let's say in a wheelchair, it's sometimes hard to select the buttons because of the parallax between the distance because of the glass. So that would also help, having that sort of ridged or tactile area would also help people who, with limited mobility, be able to make selections on the table as well.
Okay, so some of the other extensions we were talking about were RFID or some kind of personalization. So if you had some kind of number associated with you as a visitor, maybe like the one we have through HHL, you could come up with your preferences already set and tell the table, like, if you want the text to be higher contrast, bigger, if you want audio, if you don't want audio. We didn't know exactly how to implement that, so.
Yeah, we can tell you that.
Okay, yeah, you guys can do that. And we talked about our standard physical button interface as a possible attachment to the table. So if somebody had low vision or low mobility, they might not even be able to reach very far across the table, so a button interface can be better. And obviously that's that would be good for like a linear experience, but would be harder for, you know, a freeform exploratory experience. So that has its limitations, but also its benefits. And what else? We talked about haptic responses, some kind of vibration, either through the puck or.
Yep.
Or possibly in regions around the table.
Yeah, regions on the table. And Bluetooth. Yeah. I don't really know.
Oh. Yeah, so, well, sort of the last one was possibly like a Bluetooth earbud that maybe you could pick up at the, you know, on your way into the museum, and then that would always provide audio for you in one ear. So a lot of possible extensions, and, you know, again, we think some practical applications, but obviously this would be the first step, is trying to do a lot of testing. The other thing I think that would be a real challenge going forward is, you know, a lot of the applications on multi-touch tables are very simple, like this one. As applications become much more complex, obviously the audio layer would need to be more complex, become more complex. And because we don't have these as established standards, you need some sort of orientation to say, yeah, 3 fingers is going to be the gesture. In fact, Carrie, you'd said that it was like an anchor swipe gesture on your iPhone that gave you sort of audio. So people also bring preconceived gestures that they use every day on their personal devices and try to apply them in this setting. So that gesture wouldn't work because that's how you move objects on the screen. So there's going to be that competition between the types of gestures and how they get applied. Questions?
Yeah.
Just more of a comment, really. You might want to consider going forward, providing the option to provide multiple layers of audio. So it's not just one overlay of audio, but ones that you can move down through. There's been a lot of success in tactile audio tablets where people can work at multiple layers of content. And you would need to think about gestures and stuff for that, but just something you might want to think about.
Well, and we actually did think about that. The software framework that we have is sophisticated enough that we could do, you know, triple tap, triple double tap, triple tap, believe it or not. You could go with the same, basically the same 3-finger gesture, drill down, multiple layers down through the content.
Okay. So there's the Aveo tablet from View Plus, but then there's also the Touch Graphics tablet, the Talking Tactile tablet, where they've come up with some techniques for that, and that might be useful for you guys.
Right, and obviously knowing what gestures they use or what the standards are, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Carrie's already